welcome to Behind the Magic Women of Color in Wrestling panel. The basic of this panel is pretty much just kind of exploring behind the scenes of different aspects of wrestling. The wrestler, the ring announcer, the commentator, etc. And so I thought it would be nice to just kind of explore that with women of color, since it's also a very underappreciated dynamic in wrestling. So I'm going to start this off again. I am Katrina, host and creator in Cat We Trust. I'm also a writer and host of Women's Wrestling Talk. Two of the ladies on this panel is part of Women's Wrestling Talk as well. And I'm going to introduce everybody, and then I'll get right into the questions. So you can start. Tell me who you are.
Hi everyone. My name's Kid Bandit. I'm a pro wrestler, active competitor in ring. I'm also a wrestling promoter. Just got promoted very recently, so yay.
Woo!
I've been wrestling for about a year and a half now. So I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to wrestle all across the United States, as well as internationally in countries such as Canada and the United Kingdom and Spain. Based out here in LA, so yay, LA.
Hi guys, my name is TK Trinidad. I am the creator of Women's Wrestling Talks. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a wrestling network where we interview primarily women's wrestlers. We've been around since 2017. So we have after shows, all that good stuff. Prior to that, I was on Xbox 12360 with X-Pac as his co-host, and just did interviewer, TV person. You can just Google me, but yeah.
Hey you guys, my name is Stephanie Hardy, and I'm the host and creator of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And yes, if you're a wrestling fan, if you know the Hardy Boys, that's legit my last name, for real. And I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and I am also a host and writer for Women's Wrestling Talk, and TK is an amazing boss, I can say. And I am also a color commentator for the Belladonna division, which is the first all-female wrestling promotion in Alabama, period. And I've also color commentated for Black Girl Magic 2, which was this year in New York, as well as been featured on a match for Battle Club Pro. And that's pretty much that's what I do.
Hey everyone, my name is Viva. I am the first Vietnamese American professional wrestler. Just like Kid, we're traveling around making a name for ourselves internationally and nationwide. And as of right now, I'm just collecting titles as much as I can.
Hi everyone, my name is Raine, like the weather, also known as Ringside Raine. I am a ring announcer, also the winner of WWE Announcer Contest last year, and was the guest ring announcer for
Hey.
Hello, my name is Sevani. I just started wrestling in the independent scene this year. I hope to get as many accomplishments as everybody on here, but I can say that I'm fairly new and I am enjoying the ride.
Just wanted to add a gem. I'm new to you, so 2 years. 2 years in. So my first question to everybody on the panel is, what got you into wrestling, but what was the deciding factor for you to decide the job you currently do in wrestling right now? Start with you.
Oh wow, okay. My first exposure to professional wrestling was this video game called SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. And imagine my surprise when I realized that these video game characters were actually real people. And I thought to myself, wow, so they actually do this in real life. So it almost seemed like a fighting game come to life. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. I didn't get around to pursuing a wrestling career until very recently. It was 2019, I believe, when I first started training. And the reason why I felt like I needed to do it was like I want to call it a quarter life crisis. Like, what do you call like a mid-20s, like midlife crisis? So that's what ended up happening, was that I felt very lost. I didn't have a goal in life, and I figured this wrestling is something I'm passionate about. I've always wanted a wrestler that had the moves that I saw in movies, and I wanted someone that did a lot of anime stuff. And I figured, since nobody completely fills all that niche, maybe I should be the one to do that. So that's what really got me into being a performer.
So goodness, wow. I'm gonna try to think of the short version. So obviously, I'm born in Toronto, Canada. I used to watch wrestling with my father every Sunday. It was like a thing. And then became like, college kid, forgot about it, was doing track, all that good stuff. And then fast forward, actually moved back to Toronto, and I met Xavier Woods while he was at TNA, and we became friends. But we became friends, like we just talked once in a while, but I never knew, like we didn't talk about career stuff until I was in Los Angeles. And it turned out he was here for EC3, and he's like, oh, hey, let's do dinner. So we do dinner. He's like, oh, I'm with WWE now. I'm like, oh, that's cool. He invited me to a show. I went there live, and it changed my life. Just an amazing experience, just seeing, wrestlers put their body in jeopardy, and then also on top of that, doing it so well, and then making sure everybody that's in the ring is also safe. And that's an amazing, it was just an amazing thing. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna support him. Like, he needed that support, watching wrestling all the time. And probably about 3 months later, I was asked to co-host Xbox 12360. And we did that for a year, and I just noticed that there was everybody we were getting to interview were more males. Probably in my time with the show, we probably interviewed maybe 2 or 3 females, and we had a weekly show. So I noticed that that we weren't interviewing female wrestlers, and female wrestlers were doing so many amazing things. It's not like we just were new to the industry. So I created Women's Wrestling Weekly at the time, and we had a weekly show, and it was an amazing experience. And from that, the pandemic happened, and the AfterBuzz, which was a network we were on, shut down. And so then after that, we started Women's Wrestling Talk, and that's how Stephanie and Katrina came out. We went from 2 to 3 interviewers to, I think, about 15 or 20 people on staff. We have a whole bunch of writers. So definitely check out the website, www.talkpod.com. And we have after shows all the time. And the reason why I created it is that a lot of podcasts, we just were not seeing representation, whether it's women, whether it's just people of color. We weren't seeing that. So you were getting a lot of the same perspectives from a lot of different podcasts. And then also, too, there were women not being asked to do interviews. And it's like we wanted to create that where we talk to every single female wrestler and their experience, because every experience is so different. So that's why Women's Wrestling Talk was created. So not only to create an opportunity for the people hosting and interviewing and creating and producing, but also for wrestlers to give them an additional platform in addition to social media. And then also seeing them grow. So like, for instance, Viva been on the show 2 or 3 times. Like, it's just so amazing. And now she's like the belt collector. And it's so amazing to see stuff like that and seeing, everybody go through their journey. So that's why Women's Wrestling Talk was created.
Okay, so what got me into wrestling was basically my grandmother was a big wrestling fan, and she would sneak out of church services to go to wrestling events at the Battle Auditorium in Birmingham. And then my father, being, the youngest of, her set of children, he got into it. And so when he had me, when I was about like maybe 4 years old, I sort of waddled into the room and I saw him watching WCW, and I was just like, Daddy, what is this? And he was like, this is wrestling. And I was just like, okay. And so at the time, it was at the height of the Monday Night War. Like, it was Goldberg versus Hulk Hogan for the big belt. And it was just like, I was just sitting there watching these people, just go at it. And I just never really stopped. Like, I just kept watching it, from then on. And then my sister later on got into it after she was born. And to fast forward to 2020, the beginning of 2020, I had lost a job, and then I was also a member of a Facebook group where we would talk about wrestling, and I would create content surrounding it, but we had talked about starting a podcast, but it never happened, and we had downloaded the apps and everything to start it, but it never happened. So when I left that group, because we've had a falling out of such, I left that group and I didn't have a place to really put all of my wrestling opinions about everything that I liked about wrestling, everything that I liked about certain things happening in the news or stuff like that outside of talking to my father and my boyfriend about it. So I was like, you know what? I think maybe I should start my own show. And so I did it, on a whim. It was just like, okay, well, let's just keep going. And it was just audio based for a long time. For like 2 years, it was just audio based. And I loved doing it because I just love people most of all. And I just love talking about wrestling and connecting, because when you find someone who loves wrestling, you feel like you found a best friend. Like, okay, like you like wrestling too? I like wrestling too? Okay, let's talk about all the stuff that we like. And I just love it. And I just love the idea that it's become this gateway to sort of, start conversations with people, who used to watch wrestling in the past, but then maybe fell off with it, or people who are diehards just like me, or people, who may not have decided to give it a try before, but want to. And I just love that my show has gotten to that. I've gotten interviews and stuff, and it's great. And then also being a host on Women's Wrestling Talk was a great opportunity too, because that helped me to refine on-camera work and stuff like that, and learning stuff about journalism. And I just love every inch of it, of hosting, writing, and all of it. And with color commentary, that just kind of fell into my lap because there was Casey Dillon, and she was creating the Belladonna division, and she needed a commentator. And I was like, I've never done that before, but since I use my voice, let me just try. And so I sent her, she asked me, for information, and I sent her a couple of my episodes, and she only listened to like 40 seconds of one episode I had. She was like, you're hired. And I was just like, are you serious? For real? And ever since then, I've just been working as consistently as I possibly can, because, we work and do regular jobs in the midst of that. And I'm just really grateful and really blessed to do all of this.
Well, how I got into wrestling was my dad had bought me the first PlayStation console, and he bought the WrestleMania arcade game along with it. And I was obsessed with this game. Just like kid, I had no idea that these were real people. I thought this was just a game. And it wasn't until like 3rd grade when I'm talking to all my friends about it in school. And they're like, well, you should watch SmackDown on Thursday nights, when it was on Thursday nights. I'm probably showing my age by saying that. But anyways, so I was shocked. I was like, these are real people. Started watching it, got obsessed with it, and it had always been a secret passion of mine, but I didn't do anything with it until I was in college. So I was just miserable in college and praying to myself, driving home from class, and I'm just like, I really want to start pro wrestling, but I don't have the money for it. I just praying for it. I don't know how to get the money, but I really want to do it. I'm a broke college student right now. And then a car hit me from behind. It was a fender bender. It wasn't that bad. But when I pulled over and the guy told me, I don't want to get any insurance involved. Here's $1,500 and we'll call it a day. I looked at my scratch. I was like, you know what? That's not too bad. Started wrestling school that following Monday. And so I've been doing it for about 5 years now.
So for me, what got me into wrestling is, so basically I was born and raised in the Philippines, and around 2006, right before I moved to the US, I was looking for American shows to watch to kind of practice my English, practice my ear to listen in English. And I remember seeing John Cena, and in my head, I don't know what's going on here, but this looks interesting. The next thing I know, I would watch every show, well, in the Philippines at that time, they would re-air it almost every day. So I watched it every day, and then every week. And the next thing I know, I moved here in 2007, and I went to my first WWE pay-per-view. And I just knew I wanted to be a part of it. I knew I couldn't be a wrestler. I wasn't athletic enough to do it. So in my head, there's got to be a way for me to be a part of it, right? And the dream just bothered me for the longest time. And kind of like what kids said, it's kind of like something where you realize, this is something that I love. This is something I want to do. What do I do about it? Where do I take the first step? And what happened was, I was sitting at home watching SmackDown, and Asuka at that time was a champion. And my husband said, you know what? Why can't you be like Paul Heyman to Asuka? And I said, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. So I started shooting manager promos for Oscar on YouTube, and I posted on my YouTube channel, not knowing there's an independent scene at all. And next thing I know, I found out about Santino Brothers, where I met Kid, actually, we're in the same class. And, you know, she was the one who introduced me to my very first promoter, and then kind of, you know, that was just basically last year, and the rest was history. I found my way into ring announcing just by accident. I didn't know it was something that I could do, but I was just very open to what role can I play in the industry? What role can I play in the professional wrestling scene? Because to me, I love this business. I love the character that I get to be. I love how I am when I'm in front of, you know, when I'm in the ring in front of everyone. And I just love the energy of the people who also love the same thing that I love. So that's how it started for me.
I would say for myself, when I was 4 years old, my brother introduced me to wrestling. The first person I ever saw on screen was Raine. So ever since then, I can genuinely say it was golden. That's the only thing I thought about until I was a teenager, and I tried to pursue MMA. But my father and my mother, they're your typical Hispanic parents, so they didn't let me. They said that women shouldn't be doing any type of combat sport. And I disagreed with them, but I unfortunately had to listen to them. I was only about 15 years old. The dream went on. I still trained MMA, and I just constantly thought about wrestling. It was always in the back of my head. So instead of wrestling, I just decided that I was gonna pursue journalism after high school. So I went to go do that, and I just wasn't happy. I thought it's not what I want, and I don't think I would ever be happy if I didn't just do what I wanted to do. So I did what any irresponsible college student would do, and I followed my dreams. In November of 2019, I went behind my parents' back, signed up for wrestling school, cried for hours after I pressed the submit button because I was like, this is actually happening. This is really gonna start. And I remember the first time I went to wrestling school, I threw up a bunch and I was crying. But I realized, you know, this is only the beginning, and this is how it's gonna start. And I'll probably talk about it in the podcast 10 years from now. But it was a feeling like no other, being able to say I'm actually doing it. And my parents eventually started easing up on me about it. Now they understand that there's no going back and nothing's gonna change my mind. They all support me from afar, but like I said, you know, Hispanic parents. But they are more supportive than before, and I'm glad that my brother got me into it. I will always give him credit for, you know, being the first person to introduce me to such a beautiful business and such a beautiful sport. But it was my brother who got me into wrestling.
For me, really quickly, wrestling, I got into wrestling with my grandma, about 6. She loved Macho Man, Randy Savage. That was her guy. And I saw Shawn Michaels for the first time, and I was like, okay, I like how he looks. And so I have to watch some more Shawn Michaels. And that kind of spurred into me liking the Hardy Boys, specifically Jeff Hardy, because he was like crazy and over the top and super attractive. And again, I'm now heading towards middle school, and I'm like, all right, this is like husband number 5, but it's fine. And so wrestling for me started that way. As far as getting into like doing actual working in the wrestling industry, I would have never thought. My original goal was to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to lock people up, like people who did really bad things. I just wanted to, like, you know, I wanted to be that person, and then life didn't really work that way. And so I started doing writing and ghostwriting. And then the wrestling kind of started falling around the quarantine. Actually, I'm actually really, really new in all of this. I joined a podcast that was talking about wrestling because I was also in a women's wrestling group. And there's like, we need another woman to kind of give their thoughts. And I'm like, okay, and audio is not a big deal. Nobody has to see my face. And then I went to a viewing party for, I believe it was the Royal Rumble. And it was like, oh, we're going to do an on-live show right now. And I was like, pause, I don't do cameras. I don't want to be on the camera. But me doing that kind of spurred into like my own channel, which I was very fortunate to interview Kid, Raine, and Viva on my podcast. And so that led me to do my first backstage interview at the first Black Girl Magic in 2021. And then from there, I got introduced to a different promoter who wanted me to do backstage interviews. And I was like, wait, me? Of all the people you could ask, why me? I don't really do any of this. And so that kind of got me into working with promotions. And then because I did an interview with Danny Limelight, he was one of my first big interviews during the quarantine, and I sent that to Sarah, who was also part of Women's Wrestling Talk, and that got me into Women's Wrestling Talk, and then doing interviews and after shows kind of got me more comfortable being on camera, because I was always the woman, I can just write for you, and I can do the little stuff in the back, you don't need to see my face. And so that's kind of how I got it. And so in the 2 years I've done it, it's been a hell of a crazy ride, because now this is the third time I've done this panel. It was in the UK, in New York, and here. And so to me, that's insane. And so that's kind of, I guess, my little short story of how I got into wrestling. So my next question, ladies. Again, we know being a woman of color, trans women being part of anything that's considered underrepresented can be kind of hard to showcase in wrestling sometimes. And so how has it been for you personally working in wrestling, and what are some challenges you faced being, being part of the underrepresented minority in wrestling?
I once got told by a promoter that I look Chinese, even though I'm Japanese Filipino. Therefore, I was gonna get put in a tag team with another Filipino person that he thought was Chinese, and said, you two will be a tag team, and we're gonna call you guys the Panda Express. And it was very insensitive, but it's also a common trope in, at least in certain areas in the industry, where the 80s wasn't really favorable to people of color, women of color especially, and it's unfortunate, fetishization, almost like forcing us in roles that we would rather not be. And these are some, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure everybody has experienced here in this panel some form of prejudice because of who we are outside of the characters that we portray. And wrestling itself is in a weird bubble with kayfabe and reality, because you want to always be in character. It's like being a method actor 24/7. Admittedly, in 2022, that's kind of scaled back a lot. But for someone like myself, who my race, my gender, my identity it's a part of my life, but it doesn't define my wrestling character. My wrestling character is very much detached from who I am as a Filipino-Japanese wrestler. I never even mentioned that. I don't even mention that I'm a trans woman in most of the interviews. I just say that, I'm the protagonist of pro wrestling. And I guess like the big challenge is to try to make myself stand out because of my skill and my ability. And oftentimes people view me as this sort of commodity because of what I am. I've had positive opportunities because of my race and my identity as well, but it's one of those weird feelings where the negative will always be more memorable than the positive, and you always really remember I got this opportunity because I'm so and so, but you celebrate that for a second, but the things that really follow you are the ones where people did you dirty or treated you wrong. So I think the biggest challenge is really trying to, for myself, is trying to promote my character, my brand, who I am as a wrestler, without being judged for who I am outside in the ring.
Wow. For a long time, prior to getting into wrestling, I've been in the TV industry, so I experienced issues in that. So by the time I got into wrestling, I think I was kind of, already been through those battles. And fortunately, the people that I interacted with, like X-Pac, like Xavier, really introduced me to a whole bunch of other people, and they were kind of they kind of spoke on my behalf that got opportunities. On the flip side, for Women's Wrestling Talk, it's one of those things where we have a proven track record, we have a website, we have everything kind of set up, and I find that with the bigger promotions, it's often hard to get certain opportunities when other podcasts that are smaller but don't look like us or not as diverse as us are getting those opportunities. So that part is kind of frustrating. But I've always, being a child of immigrants, my parents are from the islands, I've always kind of lived by the mantra that you just kind of create your own table and they'll figure it out. So that's why I kind of live by daily. That's why, I continue kind of producing, curating women's wrestling talk to the point where I don't need to contact these promotions. My ultimate goal is I won't need to contact these promotions. These promotions are going to come to me because the product is that good. Because when they're looking for female hosts or female writers or female, they can literally go to our site and find anybody they want in whatever state to travel to do that. So that's kind of my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is that, for people like Stephanie, people like Katrina, that if they're looking for writers, if they're looking for hosts, they're looking for announcers, they can literally go to this website, find all that stuff, find women who know what they're talking about, find women that were passionate about the business. For you guys who've been following the other TK, Tony Khan, he's been saying that women, women are not, diverse, and they don't know this, and they're not TV ready, and that's a bunch of BS. So that's kind of what the site is there for. It's to create the table where, it's where women, we love wrestling, and there's a bunch of female wrestlers that are also talented. So as far as experiencing it, I haven't really experienced it as much. You go through those double dutches sometimes when you get those no's where you're like, did they say no because of I don't fit the, it doesn't fit the platform where it's like, not, three white guys talking about wrestling. Is it because we don't look like that? Or did they just say no because of whatever? And I try not to think about those things. I could continue to improve the product the way I see fit. And then also, seeing like Katrina and Stephanie, they both came around the same time, and seeing what they're doing now, like it literally gives me goosebumps. So seeing the growth overall, I rather see that, and people are gonna see all the work that's involved. So it's a little bit different for me, but I definitely, in interviewing wrestlers, I've definitely seen, people talk about their hair or ask them to change certain things or assume certain things, and that's the importance of diversity, not only in the ring, but also behind the curtain as well. And on top of that, if you need that, you can come to Women's Wrestling Talk, and we have plenty of women who do that as well. So it's kind of a one-stop shop, and that's the goal for the platform.
Well, for me, I've endured a multitude of things. I remember when I went to NWA weekend where they had Empower, and I was actually able to do press for the first time with TK for that. I was scared the whole time, but I did my very best and interviewed a bunch of people that I had actually seen on television, so that was crazy. But I remember posting pictures of it, and also other friends like DS Shin, who was there for Ring the Bell, who posted pictures, of our time together. And there was this guy or girl, whoever it was, whose profile picture on Twitter was a cartoon character, and he said that I needed to have a gym membership because of how thick I am. Stuff like that happens. And I've had people, go under comments where I've commentated for matches and say that guys suck for various reasons. And I remember the first time that incident happened where I got body shamed, like it really hurt my feelings, and I was crying a whole lot because I really do feel very sensitive about that. But at the same time, people like that, have a tendency to pick on you when they see you doing something great. And it's just, and I've also dealt with people, who have been in wrestling business or claim to have, journalism credentials on Facebook. And when you post a certain idea, like a few years ago when I was talking about hip hop and wrestling coming together and how it's possible that it could have the same effect as rock and wrestling did in the 80s. Right. This one dude lost his whole mind and was all like, oh, well, that's not true, and it's not going to happen this way, and da-da-da-da-da, and that's why your podcast isn't going to be as successful because you don't have that many followers. Have fun with your 200 followers, blah, 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 blah. But the beautiful part about it is that I have people who also work in wrestling with podcasting, with various other things, who have come right behind me and given me positive reinforcement and have taken up for me and fought for me multiple times. And the best part about it is to know that you have a community of people who see the value in what it is that you're saying. And if they disagree with you, they'll disagree with you, but they'll mean it in a respectful way and not in a disrespectful way. And honestly, I haven't had a whole lot of disrespect when it comes to race, but I feel like there's a subtext whenever someone says, oh, you're wrong because of this, that, and the third. Would you say this to another person? Would you say this to a white man who is saying anything like this? So it's very much there in the subtext, even though they're not saying it out loud. But in the midst of that, I'm just happy to have people who are surrounding me, even my family and my friends and my constituents in the wrestling world, who give me a soft place to land when it does get really crazy and really hard. They're just like, it's okay, like, forget them, like, you're awesome. And it feels really great to have that.
So for me, it wasn't until after a year I started professional wrestling is when I realized I had a higher purpose than just following my dreams. I looked around, I worked around, and I noticed there was no Southeast Asian wrestlers anywhere. So I Googled Vietnamese wrestlers, and I found a few people in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and I hit them up and I contacted them, and I wasn't aware that I was the first Vietnamese pro wrestler at the time. They were the ones that told me that. And my struggle for being a Vietnamese pro wrestler is that I've been turned down at other promotions because they have already booked other Asian people on the show, as if they can book more than one Asian person. And I think, Southeast Asia, wrestling's barely hitting there. It's still very new, but it's growing really quickly. And there isn't really a place for us right now. So I feel like my purpose, along with Raine and Kid, is to kick down doors for people like us, right? So that is my struggle that I'm dealing with, and also people always comparing me to other Asian women before me. I've been called Gail Kim, Shotzi Blackheart from Wish App, Sue Young. We don't look anything alike. We're not even the same, Asian race or anything like that. Not Asian race, but you know what I mean, like ethnicity or background. And I'm just being put in this box constantly. So that is my struggle, trying to open up everyone's eyes that there's so many of us. There are so many Southeast Asian countries. So for that, talking to my trainer Rikishi, he told me that there wasn't a place for Samoans, and now look at them. They have a whole Samoan dynasty. So I'm trying to follow in their footsteps and try to just open up more doors for us and let people know that, because as of right now, when I travel, everyone always assumes that I'm Japanese. And Japanese wrestling has been around for such a long time, and I love Japanese wrestling, but we just need to let people know that there are other Asian wrestlers out there, and we can go.
So to piggyback what Viva actually said, when I first went to my first indie show that I went to, I actually saw her, and that made me feel so proud that I saw someone who looked like me. I came from the Southeast Asia to the Philippines, and I remember seeing her, and I was like, oh my God, there is a spot for someone that looks like me in this industry. And I think that sparked something in me to kind of you know what? There is a spot for someone that looked like me, but I don't see a lot of us. I don't see a lot of people look like me. And especially with ring announcing, I don't really see a lot of female ring announcers. So to me, I remember when I won the WWE announcer contest, most of the feedback, they were positive, but I've gotten some negative feedback too, wherein I shouldn't have won, so-and-so should have won, and I check out their profile, and it's a guy, and it's like, I get it, sometimes people see that, the role is meant for a guy, which is fine, but why can't we change that? Why can't we think outside the box? Why can't we, do something else? Because I feel like talent is talent. Whether you're a male or a female, whatever ethnicity you have, it doesn't matter. If you have the talent, if you put in the hard work, at the end of the day, the job is going to get done. So for me, I've been very fortunate that working in the independent scene, the people I work with became my friends. They're very respectful of my background. But, you know, for me, my mission, kind of like what Viva said, it's, you know, to kind of put ourselves in that scene we're in. You see a lot more of us because, you know, just because you casted already one Asian doesn't mean you can't cast another one. You know, there's more spots out there. We're all, you know, we all love the same thing. So don't look at us as, oh, just one, I guess, a quota for, you know, like a check mark, right, to put like a box. So
I think when it comes to women as a whole, I feel like one of the biggest struggles as a performer is you're a woman, I can't hit you. And I feel like we're trying to break down that barrier of, no, I'm not a woman, not only woman, I'm a wrestler. And as a wrestler, you can hit me, you can do everything you would do to a male non-binary that you can do to me. And that's one of the biggest things that I feel like I am currently at this moment personally am struggling with is, it's fine, I can take it, I can handle it, just like you can, right? I've been put in a lot of sticky situations where people don't want to work with me like they would another person, mainly because again, female. And I feel like we're in 2022, that should change already. You know, it's enough is enough when it comes to you're a female, you're a male, you're a non-binary, we're all the same, we're all wrestlers. There's no difference. And as a Hispanic woman in professional wrestling, one of the biggest things as well is racism. There's no place for racism anymore. It shocks me sometimes when I hear people say certain things to me when I'm walking down, you know, being a heel, every name in the book is thrown at you. And I know my job as a performer is to be a heel, but that's not okay when it comes to yelling profanities at me, talking about my parents, or, you know, yelling just racial slurs at me. And Hispanic women in this industry are growing. There's so many of us now. And it's beautiful because there's more, you know, there's so much diversity. And it's not fair when people put their bodies out there and, you know, themselves out there for everybody to see, only just to be treated terribly. And again, we're breaking down the barriers little by little, but there is lack of respect sometimes when it comes to being who you are, aside from just the character that you're playing. But, you know, again, I feel like everybody on here is breaking down those barriers little by little, and we are making a statement and we are making a change. And it's nice to see that, you know, despite everything that's happening and all the bad things in the world, things are different, and they're slowly starting to become more different. But again, being a woman doesn't mean you're weak, you can't do anything like the rest of us. I've wrestled Viva several times, and amazing. She comes to me like she would go to a male. You know, it's all the same, we're all just wrestlers. And again, that's one of the biggest struggles that I see that's happening right now.
So we all understand our challenges, and again, we all know we're women of color. It's a lot happening, and it's getting better, but there's still so much further we can go. And so my next question to you guys is, what do you guys want to see kind of going forward for women of color in the wrestling industry? And that's all roles, backstage, behind the scenes, writers, wrestlers, all of us. What do you guys want to see going forward?
This goes directly to what Viva said earlier. I think the ultimate goal is to push for diversity without having quotas, you know? Like, absolutely, why can't we have more Asian women in, like, a card? Why is it that as soon as somebody fulfills that, like, quote-unquote diversity token, like, that's it, that's all they need? Because unfortunately, that also limits opportunities for everybody. And we are in such a niche minority that getting these opportunities are already difficult because, one, we have to deal with prejudice, we have to deal with discrimination, but on top of that, like, if a company is quote-unquote progressive, what they would typically do is say, oh, we're gonna get one person that fills that demographic, that like that quote-unquote minority role, and that's all they need. So what I really hope to be pushed is that we don't have that quota, we don't have that limit, we just get people involved based off their talent, based off what they can bring to the table, regardless of who they are what they are outside of wrestling?
At the end of the day, just, beyond wrestling and entertainment in general, it's just having diversity behind the scenes. Because, you have people who look the same calling the shots and like, okay, well, we have one of these, this makes sense. And then they have these terrible storylines that don't make any type of sense. And I feel like if you have representation behind the seenes, then the storylines make sense, then you can put the people together, and then it all bodes well for wrestling. We've often seen the token, like, oh, we got this one black person, the writer, and we never hear about them again, we don't know what they're doing, and the stories don't get better. So that's kind of my goal. I would love to see more people of color behind the scenes helping with storylines and also educating people. I've often been in rooms where, they're talking about something and like, yeah, that's not what black folks do. But I can say that because that's been my experience. And those, there have been a few times where if they went with this certain idea in television, it would not have been a good look. So, having the ability to have those people behind there and not saying, and also the same thing, like you were saying, not saying, okay, we have the quota, we have one black writer, we have one Hispanic writer, we have one, like, it's not necessarily the quota, it's the people who fit the job, but also if you look around the room and everybody looks like you, then there's a problem. So that's kind of my hopes that not only, and we're seeing a lot more women, we're starting a lot more storylines, so it's not like I'm saying nothing's happening. However, some of these storylines, very questionable. So I really hope that storylines will get better, more diversity in the ring and also behind the scenes as well.
Well, something I want to see more of is just more women of color in the intellectual space, because I am also, along with being a host, I'm also a color commentator as well. And it's just, I said this at the very first panel, like when WWE made their announcements talking about who was going to be, on commentary for Raw and for SmackDown and for their premium live events and stuff like that, it was all male, and that was disappointing. And it's just like, it is 2022, and it's just like, it's like, why, if wrestling can reflect so much diversity in the ring every now and again, but yet you're having the same male people telling the stories. It's just like, I mean, y'all do know that your audience is composed of mostly women too, right? Who probably know just as much, if not more, than the average male fan does. Like, it is the most annoying thing whenever you see them make announcements and it's just always like an all-male panel or an all-male pre-show thing or an all-male like commentary desk. Like, I want to feel like someone like me who is actively working in color commentary, like I want to feel like I have a chance. And if I have to be the first person to do it, which is a goal that I have set for myself, that if it is truly meant for me to be the first black woman to be on commentary for WWE or Impact or wherever, then I will be that representation for, for my people and for other women of color as well. And also for writing as well. Like, I want to see more women writing stories that make sense for women, because we argue about way more complex things outside of the basic level stuff. And I want to see so much more for that, and also for people of other sexualities as well. Like, I just want more diverse stories to be put out there and for more people to be able to raise their voices. And even in press conferences too, like over the past 2 weeks, 2 women that I know were actually in the press conference for Survivor Series War Games for those wrestling girls. And it was so great to see them there. Like, I was really emotional about it. Like, I was screaming to the top of my lungs. I was just so happy for them. And then there was one more woman of color who kept raising her hand multiple times, but kept getting skipped for all the men in the room. And it took Triple H saying something to actually get her attention. And it shouldn't be that way. There should be more women in those rooms and invited in those spaces to ask those questions, because men are not the only ones who pay attention and know what's going on in wrestling. We know too. We have that knowledge too. Like, give us the ball, we'll play with it, and we will slam dunk it and break the glass every time. Give us a chance. Just give us a chance.
As of now, there's probably only one Vietnamese person signed for the promotion, which is wrestler in not a wrestler, a referee in WWE. Now, if I were to put Vietnamese people in the broader category with Southeast Asians, you can only count on a handful that is signed to either WWE or AEW. The day that we lose count, that is when I'll be happy.
So to me, same thing that they've expressed too. It's just basically representation. Because I remember when I was in the Philippines, when I first started watching wrestling, I remember seeing Monday Night Raw, and in my head, there's no way that I would make it there. There's no way they would I would step foot inside that ring, because in my head, I don't look like them. Why would they choose me? I don't want the future generation to think that way. I don't want the future generation to think, well, I don't look like that person on TV or inside that ring. I wouldn't have a shot. Why would I even chase this dream? So I feel like for us, I think it's going to be like an ongoing fight. Even though there's a lot of call for representation and diversity and all that, I think we need the action. I like that there is a call, but the thing is, we need the action. The more representation we see, the more it's going to be just normal, right? The more we wouldn't have any some sort of pushback as to why is this person on TV, why they picked this woman, or why they picked this ethnicity or whatever. We wouldn't have that anymore, because I hope we get to that day we're in. It's just normal. You turn on your TV, go to a wrestling show, see someone, whether it be woman of color, male of color, non-binary, it doesn't matter, because we will get to that point we're in. You know what? We just love each other. We all love wrestling, and just enjoy the show.
What I would like to see continue or get better in wrestling is just people seeing everybody else as equals, because that's all we are. We're all equals. We're all the same. We all bleed the same red. And one thing as well is just people to just be more respectful and nice. I think that it's not really talked about much, that people just need to show more respect to everybody and each other, whether, like everybody else touched on, whether you're a woman, whether you're Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. We're all the same. And I wish more people would realize that words hurt, actions hurt, and just, it's not hard to be a nice person. And I do see a lot of change when it comes to just being a better human being. And I wish people would continue to do that. Again, the biggest thing I can say is just people to keep seeing everybody else as equals.
So because of time, I can't ask the other questions that I wanted to ask, but for everything that you ladies have said, thank you so much for coming on the panel. I've asked, Stephanie was here from the very first panel in New York, but I never thought I would have gotten even a yes when I described what I wanted for this panel. I was very surprised. I got picked for New York. I was even more surprised when the UK was like, no, we want this panel. And then Rory, who's been absolutely amazing for LA Comic Con, when I asked, I was very surprised considering the amount of submissions that they picked me from New York City to come here. And so I'm so grateful that all of you have agreed to come here and speak and talk about what it is for us, because we do have very different stories. And thank you all also for coming. You don't know me from a hole in the wall, but you guys are here. And you guys listen, and you guys, I just thank you all so much. Thank you, everybody, ladies. Thank you.